Well, for more analysis on this story, let's bring in Churchill Ogutu, who's an economist at IC Group. He's joining us from right here in Nairobi. Thank you very much for joining us on Africa Live. What would you say has been the impact, looking at the wider picture so far, of Trump's tariffs on African economies?
Thank you so much for having me today. So I'm looking at three different channels in terms of the impact of Trump tariffs on the continent. The first one was on the asset prices, where initially, because of this confidence shock, the markets reacted negatively, looking at the commodities market, looking at even the sovereign Eurobonds market. They really tanked the first week once we had the Liberalization Day tariff announcements. But after that, as more clarity came by after the extension that was there initially, so we started seeing a bit of some rebound in the asset prices. So that's one. Secondly, in terms of the policy response, you've seen that some of the African central banks have had a cautious stance in terms of adjusting their policy rates. So there's been this cautiousness amidst easing cycle that is in play. So there's a cautiousness that we've seen amongst the central banks of Africa, at least in terms of policy response. And finally, we've seen that the dollar has weakened significantly over the course of this year. And as a result of that, we've seen that the gold price has surged to record highs in the course of this year. And because of this dollar weakness and gold prices getting higher, we have seen that there's been accumulation of gold by some of the central banks, and that has also shot up the FX reserves. So those are some of the impacts that we are seeing on the continent.
Right. And Churchill, what do you expect to happen to those countries who've been slapped with over 20% tariffs starting in just about a week's time?
Yeah, I think that broadly, we should expect negotiation from these 21, 22 countries that have been slapped by higher tariffs than the rest of the countries. And then there are three broad categories. The first category is now the likes of South Africa, Algeria, and Libya, which have 30%, and followed closely by Tunisia. By and large, we should expect these countries continue the negotiations that they started way back in April. And then there's a second lot of countries that have had much improved tariff rate compared to the initial announcements in April. The story that you are looking at, the likes of Lesotho coming from 50%, the likes of Madagascar 47%, Mauritius quite elevated, Botswana and Angola. So now they're getting a much more lower rate of 15%. So that to them is somewhat like a win. So probably they may take it at this 15% as compared to where they were a couple of months ago. And then the third category of countries, we have the likes of Ghana and Uganda, which were not initially having these higher tariffs. So them right now, initially they had 10%, and now it's been increased to 15%. So expect a much more robust negotiations from these two sets of countries. So broadly expect negotiations to still continue amongst these countries.
Right. Finally, let's talk about the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. What happens there and which is likely to expire at the end of September?
Yeah, so we have AGOA that is expected to expire in next month, mid next month, thereabout. And even as we talk about, we have two sets of bills in the Congress. In the House of Representatives, we have AGOA extension and enhancement bill, which is looking at extending it up until 2037. And also in the House of Senate, we have AGOA improvement and also a bill that is seeking to extend it up until 2041. So as people say, action speaks louder than words, and we've seen some policy inertia from this these sets of bill not having been progressed within right after the Trump administration came into power. So there's a higher probability that come September 25th next month, we will likely to see that the AGOA will expire at that point rather than seeing any form of limelight from these two sets of bill. So, and also looking at the current administration, that they will want to see some surpluses with its trading partners, there's a likelihood that AGOA might not be renewed, unfortunately.
All right, Churchill, thank you very much for speaking to us on the program. Economist Churchill Ogutu joining us live from Nairobi.